Hello everyone. Ignore yesterday's upload of this video. User error. I made a mistake. It's been a while since I've used YouTube, so it has been a while, my friends. So well met. I am Rich the Lich. Erathata, Erathata. It is a fantasy tabletop RPG that I am currently creating. This isn't just an idea. It's not a few notes that I have in a notepad file or in a journal. It is my attempts to go all in creating my own tabletop RPG, inspired by some recent games I've played, inspired by things I've played 30, 40 years ago, so on and so forth. So here we're looking at the front cover, created by Sean Bova. He is the only artist, really, that is doing all of the work for this. Sean has created artwork for Crown and Skull. I know he's worked with Runehammer a lot. He's created artwork in Easy D6, so his stuff is definitely in some published stuff. I really like his style. It screams to that old art aesthetic, as you can see. It's indicative right here. And Sean did the front cover. He did a lot of the kind of interior splash art that I use in different portions to lay out the book. He's also going to be creating all of the monster art. There's going to be 45 monsters in the game, and you'll find 15 pieces of artwork with 3 monsters themed within. So let me scroll ahead and show you one. There we go, right there. So we've got goblins, the theme of goblins, obviously. We've got a goblin boss, goblin king up top, a goblin brute, and then the goblin bomber. So, like I said, 45 monsters in the book with full stat blocks and how they work and all that good stuff. And you're going to find 15 pieces of artwork. So each of the monsters will be depicted with 3 monsters per page, kind of within the same theme or vibe. So what is this game? Erathata's themes are inspired by Miyazaki films, Riot's Arcane, and Keith Baker's Eberron. There's a lot of familiar fantasy here. Dwarves, elves, rampaging orcs, giants, haunted crypts, thieves' guilds, magic swords, and swarms of undead. There's also a lot of tech. Flintlocks, lightning rifles, portal devices, spider mechs, and gorilla clans clad in blue steel armor, teleporting across a steel jungle. The theme and tone, the essence of this world, from a purely storyline point of view, comes from bugs. So think Starship Troopers, think StarCraft's Blizzard's Zerg, but large, Ultralisk size, massive. Here's the gist of it, right? A familiar story, as it says right there. An alien race loses their leader without resources from another world. This alien race of bugs, very intelligent bugs, are known as Skaneblight. And their hive mother, their leader, is dying. And they need resources from another world. That other world happens to be Erathata. So they load up into their spacecraft, and they fly and crash land into Erathata. And then they burrow, right? They spread out throughout the mainland continent and everything, and they burrow. And why they're here is they're looking for something known as leak. Leak is residual energy from a recently cast spell. And Skaneblight feed on leak. Now, leak has been present in Erathata ever since magic has existed. Erathata's wizards, the spellcasters, know that leak exists. They can see it. It's like, think of an arcane jellyfish, right? This blob swirling through the air. They know that leak exists, but no one's been able to do anything with it. They don't know what it's about. Skaneblight are here to feed on that. So whenever someone casts a spell, and obviously, until every spellcaster, the word got out that Skaneblight were here, wizards, people starting fires without tools or resources, people using magic to defend themselves, whatever, people were casting spells. And every spell leaks a little bit, right? Most of the energy is used to channel and create the effect of the spell, but every spell leaks. And now that Skaneblight have been here for a few years, Skaneblight smell that leak. It's like a beacon to them. So they break out from the crust, they break out from their hive system beneath Erathata, and they consume the leak. That's their goal. But they consume everything. They eat the spellcaster. If there's a tower nearby, they're going to eat that. If there's a wagon, they're going to eat that, So Skaneblight eat leak, right? And then they consume the leak. They keep it in their bodies, whatever they do with their digestion. and then they ultimately give it to their hive mother, and that's how they're trying to save her. So, with this situation in play, the storyline sort of forces the magic councils, the wizards, to collectively put their minds together and say, well, we need to ban spellcasting, or we need to regulate it somehow. That never works, right, in any fantasy type of setting. But what happened instead is, ironically, from the crash site where the Skaneblight crashed their ship onto the northwestern continent, the kind of think of Avengers or Thor, I think it might have been, not Avengers, when Mjolnir hit the ground, right, and they sort of militarized the zone, right? What is this foreign object? When that thing hit, obviously the various armies and factions converged to that location, and they found a lot of tech there. So that crashing ship, the Skaneblight's ship, is what's responsible for the advent of tech, right? For tech and sophistication to rise so quickly to the level that it's risen, which is why you can wield, sort of a la Arcane, the Netflix show, you can wield flintlocks and rifles, and you can throw bombs and whatnot, in conjunction with those that are using and wielding steel longswords, okay? But the crafters, the tech crafters, if you will, built this device. It's called a leak box. And right there at the bottom, the leak box is a plot device. You just have it. You don't need to track it. You don't need to write it on your sheet. It's just something that you have. And what it does mechanically is it's a way that when you cast a spell, you now have an option. You have a chance that this leak box soaks all of the leak that would have been left in the air. The leak that would have attracted the Skaneblight. But instead, if you succeed on this roll, it's a magic roll. Magic is one of your 7 stats. If you succeed on the roll, the spell casts and Skaneblight don't know. So you're good to go, right? So everyone in the world has this leak box. And everyone in this game, every character, can play as a spellcaster. See, when you look at mechanics, this game has there's no classes. It's a classless system. There's no levels. Your character, think Borderlands, Borderlands 2, Diablo, everything you are, what you do, how you do it, effectively revolves around gear. Gear is central to this game. It is the progression system. It defines what you do. So gear drives everything. You can wield a 2-handed greatsword and still cast spells. There's very few rules as far as spellcasting goes. You need to have one hand free. You need to have spell slots. You need to obviously have the spell written on your list. And you need to be able to speak. But otherwise, wear whatever gear you want. If you want to wear a suit of full plate and look like a knight, if you want to wear a full-faced helm, if you want to wear roguish gear with cloaks of invisibility and magical rings that help you stealth better, whatever it might be, you can cast a spell. And it would behoove you. It's to your benefit to cast spells, because spells can overcome some of your character's weaknesses. If you're more tanky but you don't move very fast, spells will help you move about the battlefield better. If you don't have a lot of hit points, a glass cannon, if you will, spells can boost your defensive capability. That's why this leak mechanic is so integral to the storyline and how it plays into the game, because everyone is going to be a caster. At some level, in some regard, there's going to be a caster at every table, so the leak mechanic is going to come up. So how does it work? First, let me jump ahead to stats and the core mechanic of the game. Here's your 7 core stats: charisma, endurance, magic, mind, muscle, perception, and precision. You're welcome to pause the video there and just read as to when you might roll these stats. The core roll in this game is 3d6 on or below. 3d6 equal to or under. Stats are going to be rated 5 to 15. And one of the key stats that we're talking about here is magic. And that's the stat you use to contain leak. So as part of casting a spell, once you declare your targets, you spend your spell slot, you roll magic as part of casting your spell. If you succeed, equal to or under, the spell goes off without a hitch, no Skaneblight, no blaring alarm, they're none the wiser. If you fail the contain roll, a few things happen. Number one, you fail the spell. The spell doesn't work. And then the GM makes a mark on this thing called a leak chart. And that's just something they keep written down in the corner of their notepad or on an index card or whatever. And the GM makes a note. Each time a character leaks, when they cast a spell, each time they fail their magic roll, the GM makes one mark. And then I immediately roll, as the GM, I roll a d6. And if that number is equal to or below the amount of leak on the chart, a Skaneblight spawns. So the leak chart represents how close you and the group are to spawning, to summoning a Skaneblight, to attracting the attention of these bugs that layer in the hive system beneath the crust of Erathata. So for example, let's say the chart, because it's a running thing, it's a chart that maintains its leak value through the course of the whole campaign. And even more interestingly, everyone contributes to the same leak chart. You don't have your own leak chart and then your ally has his own. Everyone that leaks is contributing to the same leak chart, okay? So say the leak chart is currently at 2, and then you go ahead and you cast a spell and you roll magic and you fail that magic roll. Well, number one, the spell didn't resolve. Sorry, that sucks. You tried to heal your friend, but the spell didn't go off, and now you just leaked 1 point. So I now move that leak from 2 to 3, immediately grab a d6, and if I roll 3 or less, Skaneblight spawns. So you can see that there's a point where if you're at 5 leak, the next point of leak on that individual, that specific instance, and forever from there on out, is always going to spawn Skaneblight. Now the threat of Skaneblight is very real. It's TPK level. Okay, these things are brutal. So you don't want to obviously spawn these things early game when you don't have all the resources and all the gear that you need to combat, the toughest monsters. You straight need to run. You need to get out of there. You need to teleport away. Okay, you need to get away from Skaneblight. But doing that is effectively, you made a mess and you didn't clean it up. So you're going to lose reputation for that, right? The wizard councils are going to know that there's these reckless casters out there that are summoning Skaneblight with their damn spell casting and they're not dealing with it. You're the cause for 2 towns getting wiped out, right? So this is not heroic stuff. So you don't want to do this. So sort of the checks and balance of it all is eventually the GM is just going to say, you're not getting away from this Skaneblight. You just ended the campaign. So that is to inform and to tell you that magic and how you cast, because you're going to cast spells, you need 2 things in place. You either need a really high magic score, but even if you had one, there's still a very good chance that you're going to fail that magic roll. Or you need things called auto-contain, gear and traits and features of your character that allow you to bypass that leak roll, to have certain spells on your list that don't leak at all, so that they're safe to cast. Okay? So that's the sort of the core energy of the both mechanics and storyline of what's happening in this world. Is there's these bugs that are layering underneath. And there are, of course, blight hunter guilds and factions that are, that delve deep into the hive system to try and root out all of these bugs under there. And sometimes it's kind of glossed over, it isn't like NPCs are contributing to your leak chart, but sometimes the GM might create a storyline that says, there's some NPCs in the north that have been leaking a lot, and as a result, there's Skaneblight running around up there everywhere. So even though you didn't summon these guys, there's going to be Skaneblight that you can encounter and run into. You're this little Terran Marine without armor on, without a gun, and then you wander upon an Ultralisk, you've got to deal with that. So that's sort of the big global threat that's always here. And as I said, they're here because they're trying to feed on leak to feed it to their hive mother. So there's systems, mechanics, rules in place that help you kind of control how much leak is out there or whether your spell leaks or not. So you might kind of, default to saying, well, then let's just not cast a lot of spells, especially if you don't have a high magic score, and let's just wield swords and shields and fight that way, which you can certainly do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of chunk this into different videos. let's leave the magic, the contain, and the leak roll alone. And we'll dive deeper into Erathata, my new tabletop RPG. I'm about 170 pages deep into this book right now. It's going to release this year in PDF only at first. And then depending on how well that does, especially financially, you know, the feedback from that and people that purchase it, it's going to be maybe $20, $25 range. So I know that's full price there, especially these days, but we're looking at a 300 to 400 page book, a full game, all the lore, detail, storyline, world building and whatnot. But from the ground up mechanically. Yes, of course it's inspired by things. There's nothing new in this world these days, you know what I mean? And especially in the tabletop RPG space, it's all been there, done that. But it's definitely not D&D. It's not, you know, there's fantasy, but definitely pulling away combat-wise and the way things function from anything 5th edition related. I really got burned out on it, and I want to go a very different direction. It's going to scream to a lot more of some recent stuff I've been into, like Runehammer's ICRPG, Crown and Skull, 13th Age, Godbound. A lot of inspiration and elements from Cairn, the Black Hack, Blades in the Dark, you know, so on and so forth. The art, as I said, like even this little flourish here you see on screen of the ravens that are outlining the boxes is all by Sean Bova. Here's another cool piece by Sean. You saw those monsters, the 3 goblins. You can play any species you want in this game. There's 15 playable ones. There's no mechanical benefit to any of them except for they're called the Cursed, and you can change into a werewolf. And that mechanically says that you have to choose the lycanthropy trait. If you're going to play Cursed, you have to choose that trait. Now, you don't have to be in werewolf form. You control the change in combat. You spend your full turn in combat to shift into and out of werewolf form, which gives you a bunch of, you know, you're a melee offensive juggernaut when you're in werewolf form. You've got Torak, which are like yak folk, rhino people called Ungalani, half Bracken. They're the half version of Minotaurs in the world. I told Sean Bova to draw a guy that was like Abe Sapien from Hellboy. So these guys are not, even though they look it, they're not amphibious, they're not aquatic, but they're descended from. You've got Nothmore, which are like nomadic elves. You've got elves themselves right here. You've got the Bone Sava, which are these sort of brooding, pale, they're not vampires, but they have that vampiric look and aesthetic to them. You've got Raveneth. Think of Skeksis from Dark Crystal. They have wings, but they can't fly. Like I said, no mechanical change, so you play what you want, male, female, whatever, including size. You know, there's no benefit to playing the larger guys. You've got human right here. You've got Bodwarren, which are feral elves, have like a bat-like nose. You've got this golem-looking dude down here, which are cave goblins. You got regular goblins. You have dwarves. And then you have, this is one of my favorite pieces, the grumble wheel. They're really short, cherubic, you know, a little bit creepy looking guys. So play whatever you want. Like I said, there's no classes. It's what you equip and how you go about doing things that way that really defines who and what you are. It is gear-centric, gear-based. Like, I'm going to give you a few snippets before we end the video. So here's the starting weapons. That's all the weapons in the game. The magic versions are built off of these. Here's adventuring gear. You know, various kits and packs and whatnot. Here's the character sheet. See your 7 stats there. You have a very special stat and mechanic known as heroic with hero points. We'll get into that later. You're capped at 10 traits. Traits are like skills and feats all combined into one. So they, besides gear, they really can shape how you weave through the game as well. Everyone can have spells, spell slots. Languages are a big part of play. Here's the language page right here. You start with 1. You can communicate with dragons and demons, but you need special traits for that. Treasure is old school D&D, real old school D&D, where treasure converts to EXP, and EXP is what you spend. Those are the points that give you all the gear that you want. You'll notice you've got equipped and carried slots. If it's not equipped, you can't use the gear. So it needs to be in a slot, and you choose. So you have one piece of gear that goes in your head slot, chest, back, arms, and so on. A lot of spells, just like species, other than one mechanic attached to ancient spells, which is you have to have a trait because they're the most powerful. Play whatever spells, use whatever spells you want. There's no benefit to using blight spells or blood, fire, frost, lore, ritual, shadow, war, and water. There's a lot. There's like over 100 new spells. There's your starting weapons, adventuring gear, and now EXP gear. You can buy potions, 1 EXP each. Here's the list of gear that goes in your head slot. Remember, you put one piece in there. Sometimes you need to have a certain trait to access the stuff from the black market. There's all the gear that goes in your chest slot. The gear that goes in your back slot. Arms, hands, waist, legs, your feet slot. Boots, shoes, sandals. All do different things, of course. Held slot, which are weapons and shields. There's 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. 5 pages of held slot, right? You have rifles and crossbows, hand crossbows and flintlocks, daggers and muskets and greatswords and whips and battle axes and tridents and a maul. You have a pair of weapons. You can't dual wield in this game by simply putting a weapon in each hand. You specifically need gear. Like you buy the Nothmore blades for 6 EXP, and that's 2 short swords. That lets you dual wield. You get 1 action in this game. You get to move and do something. That's your action. Move and grab the quest item off the table. Move and cast a spell. Move and attack with your longsword. Move and attack with your pair of hand crossbows, which gives you 2 chances to hit, 2 chances for damage, 2 chances for crit, and so on. But with 5 pages of held slot items, I mean, just think. You're holding something, a two-hander, which that's it. There it is. I hold this greatsword, a trait called Brutal Strikes. If that triggers, I now heal. That's what's in my hands. So I've now chosen not to wield that, all of this, all of this, all of this, you get it, and everything interplays with one or another. If you don't want to invest too much EXP into the best gear, maybe you're going to get mounts. And you have a trait called Cavalry, which lets you now ride into combat, giving you benefits for being mounted. Maybe you go all in on your pets. Maybe you're not a big spellcaster, you don't have a high magic stat, so you decide to get the Herbalist trait. You're digging around in these 9 biomes, I should say. And then based on what herbs you gather, you create consumables or poisons, which now changes the way that you do combat. Maybe you don't need a really high-end magic item, but you're going to put on, you got a stealther about. You put glowworm on your dagger. Whenever you hit that creature, they can't turn invisible. And that's a permanent effect. But you need 4 herbs from the subterranean environment, and you're going to need allies to help you gather that stuff up. You've got 5 jewelry slots. Do you want to put stat rings in there? Where your 5 slots are filled up with 5 rings. Each ring gives you +2 to a stat. That would be equivalent to, like in D&D, one of those rare, legendary books, right? So on paper, that sounds like the best, but 5 of those each cost 15. But now that's it, you're done. You've only got like 10 to 15 max hit points, and that's end game in this game. Without wearing gear or taking a few traits that give you more hit points, there's no leveling. You don't go up in hit points anymore. But you've got the 5 sort of gem rings. You've got Ring of Diamonds, Emeralds, Pearls, Rubies, Sapphires. Each gives you +5 max hit points. But now your 5 jewelry slots, right here, they're all occupied with those hit point rings. Maybe you want a ring that lets you see in the dark. Maybe you want a ring that gives you more spell damage. We'll get into it. We'll dive into it. So, good talking to you all again. And that's it. That's all I got. Thanks, guys. See you later.